So we're going to start with our speaker tonight. We're really excited to have Charles Chip Paul. He is a systems theorist, researcher, and educator focused on advancing a systems-based understanding of human health. His work integrates biology, environmental inputs, and regulatory processes to better explain how dysfunction develops and how the body maintains balance. With a background in mathematics and executive leadership across telecommunications, biotech, and healthcare, Chip has developed frameworks that connect cellular signaling, mitochondrial function, lipid biology, and environmental influences into a cohesive model of human function. He is the founder of TrueMedX, am I saying that right? Yep. And co-founder of Neighborly Wellness, where he applies these concepts through product development and client education. His work bridges theory, application, and real-world outcomes. He is also known for his role in public policy, including authorship of Oklahoma's medical cannabis law, State Question 788. That was a while ago, wasn't it? A few years ago.
2018.
Yes, and continues to contribute to national conversations around health policy and regulatory frameworks. A recognized educator and speaker, he has delivered a TED Talk, contributed to professional publications, and been featured in national media outlets. Please welcome Chip Paul.
Thank you for that introduction, and thank you guys for having me. It's kind of brave, really, to have probably somebody like me. I can be a little controversial, but I think that we're in a time of change right now. And if you look at 15 or 20 years ago, kind of the attitudes on healthcare and kind of where we were all at. I mean, we were all, kind of bought in, let's say, to the system. Some things have happened over the last 10 years or so that have caused everyone to kind of, let's say, look at alternatives and begin to open our minds a little bit about what might be out there. So hopefully I can do that a little bit about me. So how many of you guys here have heard of the endocannabinoid system? Yeah, no one. Oh, that's interesting. So most people have heard about the endocannabinoid system, and they think that it's some hippie way to sell you on marijuana, okay? So most people have heard about this system, but interestingly, this system called the endocannabinoid system is our master regulatory system. So how many of you guys know about the central nervous system? Most of us were taught that the central nervous system is our master regulatory system, but in fact, this endocannabinoid system regulates the central nervous system. It also regulates our immune response, it regulates our feeding and craving behavior, it regulates everything in us. It also regulates, all mammals, it regulates everything in the spine, okay? So when you look at something like medical marijuana, why is it important to someone like me? Well, I understand the system, and humbly said, I'm top 5-ish on the world on this system. I helped build the curriculum at the University of Mississippi, so on this system at a master's level. But anyway, when you look at the system, and it's our master regulatory system, here's this medical marijuana that's like a magic screwdriver if you know what you're doing with it into that system. So is that valuable? Yeah, I mean, we need to prove out some safety, we need to do some things, and the federal government now has got that on a track where now we're going to be able to prove some stuff, which is great. So it's not horribly, hideously dangerous anymore. But anyway, what I do is I am top 5 in the world on that system. I've helped build curriculum, I've been an adjunct professor at universities, so I try to speak and teach about that system. But from that, let's say, understanding of human function, it really helps to understand how nutrients work, certainly, and help you get a little bit different systemic view of human function. See if this will work. Oh, goody. This will be so fun. So you guys get to see the flashy for a while. But today we're going to talk about nutrient deficiency and how it contributes to system dysfunction and reductive adaptive capacity. We're going to talk about systems-based model for understanding health and regulation. It's a little different than what you've been taught, but I'm not going to say anything in this presentation that isn't scientifically validated. So all the science that I do, I stand on people's shoulders. I just kind of put it together in a little bit different way than it's ever been put together before. We're going to emphasize non-clinical, educational ways that we can help people, and we're going to provide practical, real-world strategies for helping our folks, whether we call them patients or clients. You guys call them patients, I gotta call them a client. So our learning, sorry, again, it's just gonna do this, but our learning objectives for today, we're gonna understand nutrient deficiency and what is driving system dysfunction, okay? So we're going to identify significant relationships between nutrients and hormones. So any of you ladies in here concerned about hormones ever? We're going to talk about kind of how nutrients go into that picture. Men as well. You know, we have low T problems now, so we'll talk a little bit about that. We're going to apply simple, practical strategies for client support. We're going to understand the role of detoxification and lymphatics. We're going to recognize inflammation and communication system breakdowns. And we're going to look at this at a system level. We're not going to look at this at a, let's say, organ level or anything like that. So ethically, this course content establishes scope and credentials. This aligns with professional competence, so S3 and ethics standards. We're supporting better client outcomes through understanding, and that meets an S5 requirement. These are just requirements that we need to meet in order to satisfy your CEU, CMU requirements. So anyway, clear educational intent and competency boundaries. So what is our core model? Well, our core model is a little bit different, let's say, than what you've been taught in school and what I was taught in school. So, but it definitely is, let's say, defensible scientifically, and it's looking to be right. So, what happens to, why do we get sick, right? Why do we get sick? So it's, you know, there's 100 reasons out here in this hospital. There's lots of, you know, kids out here that we can point to as an example. But, you know, the way that we're engineered is really pretty perfect. And if you look at how a cell is engineered, you know, we're constantly turning over cells, right? And we're just a big bag of cells. That's all we are functionally, is just a whole bunch of cells that are held together in some way, which we're going to talk about. But anyway, cells are pretty easy to study. And cells don't really make decisions. A cell doesn't decide, hey, I'm going to be old. Hey, I'm going to be dysfunctional. Hey, I think I'll have cancer. Cells don't work that way. Things happen to cells, and then they become dysfunctional. So there's always a root cause for disease, right? And interestingly, those root causes all kind of map back to some common things. Okay, we're going to go back and forth. So, essential nutrients. How many of you guys can name your essential nutrients? And again, don't raise your hand. You don't know them. No one knows them, okay? Can you name your essential nutrients for your car? Yeah, oil and gas. What happens if you don't put oil and gas in your car? Do you get a good result? No. What happens if you don't put oil and gas in you? Do you get a good result? How are you going to beat cancer without oil and gas? How are you going to overcome disease without oil and gas? How are you going to defend yourself from pathogens without oil and gas? How are you going to beat COVID without oil and gas? How are you going to stay young without oil and gas? Okay? So, pretty important that we understand what our oil and gas is. How insane is it that we're a bunch of medical professionals and none of us can answer this question? That's insanity. Wouldn't baseline education start off being, I think I need to teach you about your oil and gas? We're trying to get, in our nonprofit, we're trying to get this education in every credentialed, you know, medical situation. So in the future, hopefully, as you guys re-credential, one of the questions that you're going to get asked is, what are your essential nutrients? And every doctor should be able to answer this question. Every medical professional should be able to answer this question. Every child should be able to answer this question. And if you go ask PhD Joe, who teaches dietary nutrition, PhD Joe, what are my essential nutrients? He doesn't know. Okay? How many hours did you guys get in school on essential nutrients? 1, 3? Not very many, right? So what are our essential nutrients? Omega-3 and omega-6 in balance, okay? Where do we miss? And I'm gonna talk a lot more about this, but where do we miss right now? We all overconsume omega-6 and underconsume omega-3. This is a critical health problem right now. Every single person in this room is unstudyable cellularly because of this problem. That's how bad this is, okay? And I'll talk more about what happens when we're this disbalanced. But we should eat omega-3 and omega-6 fats in balance. Where do omega-3 fats come from? There are plant sources, but they're not going to work for you right now. You can eat all the plant sources of omega-3. You're not going to break them down into EPA and DHA. And there's an enzyme reason for that, something called delta-6 desaturase, that you compete with other fats. But anyway, we don't break those down. So if you're not eating a lot of fish, you're not getting enough omega-3. So fish really is where we get omega-3. The second category of essential nutrients are amino acids. So we all know about protein. If you eat 4 ounces of protein a day, you're getting enough of the 9 essential amino acids. But the problem is, because we don't get enough vitamin C, we don't convert the 9 essential amino acids into 7 essential amino acids, which results in collagen deficiency, okay? Every single visible sign, pull out your AI tool and check me out. Every single visible sign of aging has to do with collagen malnourishment. The way that you're designed cellularly is that cells should kind of hit a maturity and stay there. Now they're constantly renewing, but they should kind of hit a maturity and stay there. Now, we don't do this right now, but what does that mean? That means I should look like I'm about 30 to 35, even if I'm 120, okay? Every single visible sign of aging is a collagen deficiency. That's how malnourished we are in collagen. We triage. You need about 5 to 10 grams of collagen every single day to turn over your gut lining, okay? Where are you getting 5 to 10 grams of collagen? Where does anybody get 5 to 10 grams of collagen? We don't eat it anymore. So you've got to have it. If you don't have collagen, you don't rebuild your stomach lining, and guess what happens? Your stomach acid eats through your stomach. So you're gonna build gut lining. Where do you get the collagen? Well, you rob it. You rob it, first of all, from cosmetic. Hair, teeth, eyes, skin, visible signs of aging. The second place that we rob it from is reproductive. How many women do you know that are trying to get pregnant right now that can't get pregnant? How many men do you know that have ED or urinary issues? Again, collagen, 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 collagen. There's other reasons for that, but collagen is a big reason. The last category of essential nutrients are, well, oxygen and water, you gotta have those. The last really major category are vitamins, trace minerals, and metals. And where we mainly miss in that category are water-soluble vitamins, all right? We'll store a little A, we'll store a little D, we'll store a little E, we'll store a little K, we'll store some metals, we'll store some trace, but we can't store water-soluble vitamins. You have no way to do that. So if you're not taking a B vitamin or a C vitamin every day, you're malnourished, okay? And we'll talk about food in a second. We just can't get this stuff from our food supply. Okay, so in a cell-centric health model, and this is our model, again, we're just a big collection of cells, but how does this work? Well, this is really, really cool, okay? So this is gonna tie in the endocannabinoid system for you guys. So cells are like little people, all right? They're like little people, and they're either happy or they're not happy. And why would a cell, let's say, need to be happy? Well, he's deciding what he needs to do. So again, he has a job. So if he's a heart cell, he's going to try to help work that muscle. But he's got a job he's got to do, number one. But he has to understand his environment. I mean, if I'm a heart cell, I got to join with you, and we're going to build a heart together. So we got to know what's going on. We got to be able to talk to each other. So cells want to communicate with each other. The way they do that at a master systems level, how do your cells talk to your hypothalamus hippocampus? Through the endocannabinoid system. And every cell, if he's comfortable, if he's happy, if he wants to participate in the collective, will raise his hand. He'll express a CB1 neuroreceptor that's part of the endocannabinoid system. and so will the organelles inside of him, and so will every piece of that cell will say, I'm ready, communicate with me, pathway with me, tell me what to do, tell me how I can help, tell me I can help the community, be a better person, right? Be a better you, a healthier you. So that's the way it should work. What happens is the environment, the milieu, if you will, right now for all of us is very threatening to a cell. We're all chronically inflamed and we're all malnourished, right? And when that happens, a cell now is like, gee, it's scary out there. I don't know if I want to be pathway to, like, turn me into cancer or something. So I'm just going to pull in my antenna. I'm going to be a selfish little guy. I'm just going to do what I do by default. So let's take a disease state. So let's look at type 2 diabetes and obesity, all right? So what we know kind of what the pharmacological, let's say, pathology of those diseases are, but what's really going on? Well, you can measure this. You've got fat cells. Check it out. You've got fat cells that are saying, it's too chronically inflamed out there. I don't have what I need. I'm going to check out. And when I check out, I'm going to do what I do by default. And that's store fat and run on glucose. So what does that do to you systemically? Now you gain weight, and now you turn toward type 2 diabetes. Okay? Guess what happens when I remove the chronic inflammation and I restore essential nutrients? Now I express a receptor again. Now I pathway again. So nerve cells do this. You've got nerve cells that are trying to find the beat, and they'll express a ton of endocannabinoid receptors trying to find out what they need to do. And those guys are going to be neuropathy based. And then you've got other nerve cells that are overexcited because they can't get the beat, and those are going to lend to seizures. So cells really determine bigger pathologies, bigger problems. So what's going on in the cellular level? What is impacting those cells and why? But you have to look at the endocannabinoid system at a top level, and then you have to look at systems under that. I'll talk more about that when we talk about regeneration. So nutrient insufficiency impacts everything, right? So again, if you don't have enough omega-3 and omega-6 fats, the way that we should work as an inflammation is very logical and obvious when you understand how cells work. But when you get insulted by something, we should have an inflammatory response, right? And this is the way our immune system works, but it should be a boundary response. It should be a boundary response. And then we should, and why do we do that? Again, if you have a repair area, you're going to fluid off, that area in order to repair it. Then you should initiate your healing sequences, and you should go in there and basically mediate and heal that area, and then you should deflame that area. And that's the way that we should work under any immune event. What's happening right now, and this is because of omega-3, omega-6 disbalance. We're on fire. Omega-6s are what allow inflammation to happen and reactivity to happen. So now when we have an insult, whoosh, we have a huge reaction that's unboundaried, and none of us have enough omega-3s to boundary that reaction, mitigate that response, or heal that area. So we just stay this way. That's just omega-3, omega-6. You throw B vitamins on top of that, without a lack of B vitamins, now you can't methylate, now your DNA doesn't work properly, the cells. Life is not a alive or dead situation, okay? Life is a dimmer switch situation. I can definitely turn you off when you're dead, but I also can turn you up. And you can think of this as mitochondrial efficiency. Okay, so if I can really get you disease-free, and if I can get you nutriented, if I can get you your mitochondria properly nutriented, you're going to be a bright bulb. But that's not really what happens out here right now. You've got a lot of forces that want to dim our bulb. So without B vitamins, you're dimming your bulb. Without C vitamins, you're dimming your bulb. Can you be resilient against disease with a dim bulb? Can you be resilient against cancer with a dim bulb? No. Can you be resilient against any genetic abnormalities? I have the COMT gene mutation, I have the MTHFR gene mutation. Does that matter? with a dim bulb, but not with a bright bulb. You've got two major systems, pathway around any genetic problems that you might have. Okay, so hormones and nutrients, right? So we have a clinic that's a non-medical clinic. I'm not a doctor, so we can't really help you medically, but we can give you a whole lot of information. We can help you with diet, nutrition, and a whole bunch of stuff. But we have a lot of women, let's say, that come in our clinic that are seeing a naturopath or something like that, and they'll come in. I used to not ask this question because we've got a way to kind of look and see if somebody's infected with stuff, and especially parasites. So we've got a way to help people with parasitic infection naturally. So that works 90% of the time, 95% of the time, just boom, 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 boom. But I've always got these people that come in and I cannot get them cleared of parasites. So I started asking them, well, you taking any medications? What you guys are doing? Well, yeah, I'm on hormone replacement. Well, what are you on? Progesterone. Okay, all right. So start doing some research and look, and the way your immune system works is you put a little name tag on every single cell that you make. So I put a little chip, CD55, surface protein, put a little chip name tag on every single cell that I make. Why? So my immune system can look at things and go, oh, that's chip. Oh, that's not. Okay? And if it goes, oh, that's not, it's going to basically decide, is that a virus? Is that a bacteria? Is that a parasite? Or is that a fungus? And then I'm going to build an immune response around basically what that thing is. And I'm going to try to kill it first, and then I'm going to build more of an antibody response if I can't build it later. Innate immune system, adaptive immune system. But that's kind of the way your immune system works. So if you're pregnant and you have a baby, that baby's making cells, but it doesn't have a mama name tag on it, it has a baby name tag on those cells. And guess what those look like to your immune system? Things that aren't you. And guess what you'll do to those cells if half of your immune system isn't shut off? You'll kill them. So when you get pregnant, women, they will spike a hormone called progesterone. That shuts off your adaptive immune system. You are super vulnerable to parasites at that point, okay? And also other infections. You're pretty good on the viral side, but not so much on the parasite side. So that allows basically your immune system to be vulnerable to parasitic infection. And we've now made this connection that, okay, if somebody comes in and they're on progesterone, we need to have a conversation with them about the importance of that. They need to go back to their medical professional and talk about that. Is it really needed or not? Because we're going to have a hard time getting them uninfected as long as they're on that progesterone. But if they have to be on it, then just switch that to the morning. And that really allows us to be able to work with them and clear a lot of infection. But hormones we think of in a kind of a sex way, right? So I'm a man, I need a lot of testosterone. I'm a woman, I need a lot of estrogen. It's really more about the immune response and killing things. So when you have this explosive immune response, you're also releasing chemokines and cytokines that are telling your hypothalamus hippocampus, we think it's a fungus. We think it's a fungus. It's probably a fungus. And then you'll shape charge that immune response to a fungus based on that feedback. But that's all done with hormones, okay? That's all done with hormones in the local environment. So, we need to be aware of that. The other thing is hormones, if we're having a hormone response, those come from somewhere. So it's not like we're just, God suddenly creates resources inside of us, right? Oh, I need something, I'll just create it magically. No, again, we have a bucket of resource, right? We have limited resource, and we have to make hormones from cholesterol. What happens if you're on a statin? Are you going to be hormone depleted? Okay? Because again, you're altering your cholesterol level. You're altering your ability to build hormones. Okay? So anyway, there's a lot in the hormone area. The other thing that's really interesting, okay, if a man, and check me out on this, use your AI tool, if a man has gonads, he makes testosterone. There's no way that cannot happen. So why would I not have any testosterone in my blood? Got gonads. Why don't I have any? Something's happening to it. And there's an enzyme called aromatase that if I'm especially parasites like to do this, but if I'm a parasite, again, testosterone hurts me. might kill me. It might allow you to kill me. So I think I'm going to change that. I'm going to step on this enzyme called aromatase, and I'm going to cause you to convert all of your testosterone to estrogen, estradiol. So yeah, so that goes on right now. So literally, if you know men who have low T, they're infected with something. They're infected with something that is stepping on that aromatase enzyme that's converting, as long as they have gonads, it's converting their testosterone to estrogen. Okay, so inflammation and detox. So we're going to go back and forth. So inflammation is something that we all have. So it's everyone in this room is somewhat chronically inflamed. If you don't believe me, we'll go measure it. I'll show you your C-reactive protein. We'll kind of look at stuff. I can show you with a thermal imaging camera how we're all chronically inflamed right now. Now, why are we chronically inflamed? Well, because we just don't understand how we work. And guess what happens if you don't have oil and gas? I mean, is it the biggest thing, the biggest job of our immune system to defend what's in here from what's out here? And you guys know this, everybody, I've got strep and staph just all over me at any moment. Every time I take a breath, I'm probably, fighting off thousands of different, pathogens. So we're constantly in this exchange with fighting against this world, against, this world wants to bring things into us and basically control us and kill us, or live off of us parasitically. So how does that work? Well, we need a barrier, right? So we need to have strong barriers. How do you build strong barriers? Well, you build strong barriers with oil and gas, okay? Without essential nutrients, and certainly without collagen, and if you want to walk you down this, I'll walk you down how this happens with gut lining and everything. But without collagen, we can't defend ourselves. And if we can't defend ourselves, we're going to get infected, okay? What causes chronic inflammation? You might live over a lead mine. Yeah, you're going to be chronically inflamed. You might work in a plutonium factory. Yeah, you're going to be chronically inflamed. But for most of us, it's some kind of infection. It's some kind of infection. Now, if you have an infection, how are you going to beat that infection? Again, that's going to take resources. That's going to take essential nutrients, right? I mean, this is just obvious stuff, but we've never been taught this stuff. If we're going to beat something, we're going to have resources. And our body needs resources to fight. The cool thing about infection is that you're designed to beat anything. But you might need some help with, and I call it God's pharmacopoeia, just nature. So God built us a great system out here in nature. We've just got to understand it. But it's designed really to help our immune system beat certain things. Now, the other thing that's interesting here is if you have an inflammatory event and you're needing to regenerate tissue, and we regenerate stuff all the time, and I'll talk more about that in just a second. But we regenerate tissue all the time. So every 3 to 5 days, you turn over your entire gut lining. So we're always regenerating tissue. But you will not regenerate tissue if you cannot clean up inflammatory junk. So if you've got a bunch of detritus and stuff in your extracellular matrix and your lymphatic system, your regeneration program will not work. You won't regenerate. So it's super important to keep the lymphatic system moving in addition to having essential nutrients to power us. So what goes on with a lot of this, again, are these system communication breakdowns. So again, we're going to flash back and forth for a while. But in these system communication breakdowns, we have situations where, and this especially happens in our gut becomes so crisis out because we don't really have what we need to defend it, and it's the first point of infection, our gut and our lungs, and for women, it's one other area that you're open to air, but those are the areas where we first get infected. When we begin to get infected, and again, when these cellular systems get threatened, they check out. So I've written some white papers on things like type 2. You guys are interested in these, happy to send you these white papers. But like type 2 diabetes is a direct situation where you have, because of omega-3 and omega-6 disbalance in cell walls, you have a situation where the signaling molecule changes and you start using an endocannabinoid called 2-AG. As soon as you do that, you wreck your insulin receptor. You cannot make an insulin receptor when you are using 2-AG to signal in this cellular network. So if you look at like type 2 diabetes and insulin resistance and things like that, those are directly endocannabinoid things driven by chronic inflammation. So all of this stuff kind of comes back to common genesis, which is kind of cool. And it allows us to look at disease in a little different way. And just, this is stuff that's coming, right? So capacity versus load. So another thing that we see in kind of what we do is, if you're in your 80s or 90s, you are a lot more resilient than I am. I'm a lot more resilient than people who are in their 40s. People in their 40s are a lot more resilient than people in their 20s. People in their 20s are a lot more resilient than the kids that we're seeing now. Now, why is that? It's because of food. So, Marilyn, you ate better food than me. I ate a little bit better food than Cindy, right? So, she ate a little bit better food than the generation below her, and that generation ate a little bit better food than what we're eating now. But kids almost every kid that I see in our clinic has just whopping parasitic infections. People who are 80 are defending themselves a lot better against parasitic infections than young people. But it's because of our food supply, and it's because of essential nutrients. So we used to, in let's say Marilyn's time, and in my time, we used to be able to eat the food in the food supply and get our essential nutrients. You can't do it anymore. Yeah, you would have to eat, so there's, B1, B2, B3, B5, B6, B7, B9, and B12 are all the Bs. And those are mainly green, leafy, vegetable-y stuff, but you have to almost eat a room full of that stuff right now at current levels to get what you need. So we all have to supplement. We all really need to supplement right now. And what we're seeing in our people, our clients that do supplement, so if we can get somebody to begin to take essential nutrients, which means just balance take omega-3, which will balance omega-3, omega-6, take a collagen, plus some stomach acid stuff that we have, and then just essential vitamins, trace, and metals. Those people get better a lot quicker than anyone else. And if you play the AI game, what happens if society misses with B and C vitamins, collagen, and overconsumes omega-6 over omega-3? Say, what diseases would you see? Everything that we see: cancer, obesity, autoimmune, Crohn's, IBS, arthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, everything that we see in our society. What happens when you restore those essential nutrients? Everybody climbs out of the toilet. Everybody. Okay? So, ask your AI tool. Don't have to believe me. But you're going to get to the same place that we are. Back to the modern diet. I mean, there is no way, right, that we can get what we need from our food supply. There are dangerous, I would say, things in our food supply. So, interestingly, essential nutrient-wise, have we talked about carbohydrates? Yeah. Are they essential?
No.
No. You can go the rest of your life and never eat another carbohydrate. Vegetable, okay? They're not essential. Fruits, we talked about fruits. They're not essential, okay? They do help. So carbohydrates are a good source of vitamins, and fruit obviously is a good source of vitamin C. So they are, somewhat beneficial, but you don't need them. They're not your oil and gas. But here's kind of a cool thing that does happen with them. So are you guys familiar with the concept of living soil? So we've kind of learned that we need the earthworms and the aphids and the bacteria that's in the soil to really make that soil robust. We've learned that plowing the field and getting rid of the topsoil and throwing a bunch of fertilizer on it is not really the best way to grow things. But the best way to grow things is in this living soil. And to me, that's kind of cool. Say a godly plant interfaces with the earth through this living kind of situation. But it looks like for us, our gut biome is kind of that same thing, okay? So our gut biome, there's about 5 to 6 different types of bacteria that we need to support in our gut biome that do certain things. Like there's uric acid that some of these guys make that close up our gut junctions that keep us from getting IBS and Crohn's. These bacteria are beneficial, let's say, to our function right now. and they help us kind of interface with the earth. But a lot of people that we see have something now called SIBO, which is where you overgrow with certain bacteria in your gut biome, Lactobacillus acidophilus especially. But it's kind of analogous to, overwatering your compost pile, which is interesting. But anyway, the gut biome is driven by carbohydrates, is driven by fruits and polyphenols, and in the next 10 years, we're going to be talking a lot about how to manage our gut biome, eating for your gut biome, I get gassy right after I eat and bloat. Well, you need more potatoes and starch, so we're going to have a lot of those kind of combinations and conversations about our gut biome in the very near future. But, we absorb things through that gut, so it's important to understand what that gut biome is, and we make some vitamins that we need in that gut biome. But the way that we eat right now, any kind of vegetable oil, you're adding to your problem. Well, I'll put it this way, and again, back to the unstudyable thing. So I'm blessed in some of the people that I know around the world, and I was recent, this was 2016, a long time ago, I was probably looking at stuff for cannabis around the endocannabinoid system, but I was looking into the endocannabinoid system, I was looking at omega-3 and omega-6 fats. The master precursors for the endocannabinoid system, your master regulatory system, are the two most important essential nutrients called omega-3 and omega-6 fats. How cool is that? We run our master regulatory system through the two most important things that we eat every day, omega-3 and omega-6 fats. But anyway, I'm figuring all this stuff out, kind of looking at all this research, and so I go, I wonder who's the world expert in dietary fats, omega-3 and omega-6 fats. And it's this lady named Dr. Artemis Simopoulos. She's 95 now, but she wasn't when I first rang her up. But I wonder if I could get her on the phone. So I call her, I get her on the phone, which was awesome. Start having a great conversation. I'll give you 30 minutes on endocannabinoids, this can give you 30 minutes on dietary fats. We had this great conversation. But when Robert F. Kennedy kind of got, was associated with the Trump administration and kind of got put into his position, we knew that we had a really good opportunity to really bring this to awareness to all of us. And so we wrote a white paper about how whacked out we are omega-3, omega-6 wise right now, and all the diseases that this drives. But this just drives so many diseases. And I'll walk you through something real cool here in just a second. But anyway, this is something that should be very soon. Why is this so whacked out in our food supply? Well, Simopoulos was studying this. She knew that we had to have 1-to-1 omega-3 to omega-6. She studied an egg in Greece, all right? So I'm going to look at an egg. And they looked at an egg, and it turned out that egg was perfect, balanced, 1-to-1 omega-3 to omega-6. She's like, oh, we found the superfood. And she was a big deal at NIH, one of the first females at NIH. But she comes back to NIH, National Institute of Health, and she goes, hey, I figured it out. I found the superfood. It's an egg. I go, okay, let's study one here. They study an egg here. 25-to-1 omega-6 over omega-3. And again, you should be 1-to-1, 4-to-1 at worst. 25-to-1. So like, whoa, what's going on? So they started looking at what the chickens ate. And chickens, just like our pigs, just like our cows, just like our sheep, just like every feed animal that we have, eats corn and soy. Corn and soy are loaded with omega-6 fats. They have no omega-3 fats. Those same animals used to free range, right? They used to eat grass and buds and all kinds of stuff. Those things have omega-3s in them. So our meat animals used to be somewhat balanced, omega-3, omega-6. Right now, they're a bunch of omega-6 and no omega-3. And that's where we're getting those fats. So every time you eat a steak, every time you eat a piece of chicken, every time you eat some meat animal, you are adding to this problem that we all have. Something that we all should be aware of, educated on, and it's something that almost the government should be screaming about. So that's what we're trying to do. Have we been effective at that? A little bit. We're getting there, but it's hard to, that threatens a lot of big food, big pharma. There's a lot more to that than just trying to communicate stuff to you guys. But anyway, our diet right now is not real good. And, we all need to kind of be self-aware. Learn to discern is kind of a good thing that we all need to do right now, certainly with diet. Membrane signaling is super important. So if you look at how regeneration works, and again, if I have something go wrong with me, I want that tissue system or my gut lining or whatever it is, I want it to regenerate. Well, we're interesting. So it's we live a long time, we have a high cancer risk, and any time that, let's say, cells want to run a regeneration program, there's a cancer risk. There's a big cancer risk, okay? So there's a big screening cancer risk. So it's something that your body, let's say how you're designed, how you run, need to be really careful with when we begin to regenerate things. So if I cut off my hand, right, I'm not going to grow a new hand. I'm going to scar that over and heal that up, but I'm not going to regenerate that tissue. If I'm a salamander and I cut that off, I'm going to regenerate that hand. Are those cells any different in that salamander than me? No. Same cells, same immune cells, same endothelial cells, same nerve cells. Again, salamanders don't make different cells than me, same cells. They might be pathwayed a little different, and they might be configured a little different, but I'll tell you, the secrets of the universe are almost in why a salamander will do that and I won't. Can we be like a salamander? Same cells? Absolutely, we can be like a salamander. There are literally, like, when you go to heal tissue, there are several different permission gates, okay? The first permission gate, and this would be the same as if you wanted to get pregnant, okay? So the first permission gate is the endocannabinoid system. And the endocannabinoid system is going to say, okay, you want to do that. Is that going to hurt the organism? Is that going to threaten the organism? Because if that threatens the organism, if that pregnancy or healing that tissue threatens the organism, we're not going to do it. The answer is going to be no. And then the next state is the immune system. So the immune system will say, gee, are we so infected that we're going to run a cancer risk if we try to do that? Or do we have the juice to do that? And if the answer is yes, we're going to ask the next question, which is extracellular matrix. And then we're going to look at the cell membrane, and if the cell membrane will support that regeneration. But if the answer to all that is yes, then you're going to regenerate, and you'll regenerate an arm. If the answer to all that is yes, or you'll regenerate certainly gut lining, which we do all the time. So we're constantly in this regeneration, immune kind of response, but this is so driven by omega-3 fats. You won't regenerate without omega-3 fats. Omega-3 fats have something in them called special pro-resolving mediators that resolve inflammation, that mediate inflammation, and that heal tissue. And right now, how we're configured, we're really good at inflaming, we're really good at reacting, we're not so good at healing and regenerating. But it's so easy to fix. Eat more omega-3. Take your essential nutrients. Understand what your oil and gas is.
Can you overdo omega-3?
No, you can't. Every cell will have a percentage. Again, that's some intellectual property. So what's the difference between a salamander and you? Salamanders live in a lot colder environment. And so your cells will have a certain percentage of omega-3s and omega-6s that they'll hold. You have a certain area for polyunsaturated fats. And it's about 20% of most of our cells. But if I put in a cold environment and I keep those cells cold, I can get more polyunsaturated fats and I can get more omega-3 in that cell, and you're going to heal better, okay? So cold is kind of a trick to initiate healing. But no, if you eat too much omega-3, again, every cell, the first thing that a cell wants to pull into its membrane is omega-3, DHA and EPA. And you can't have too much of it. And if you do, you'll just poop it out. So yeah, good question though. I know we all get plenty of omega-6 right now. So just real quick to kind of recap, vitamins and minerals are essential for biochemical reactions. Again, you can't run enzymes, you can't run your body without vitamins and minerals. They're necessary for the body to support cellular repair, so we're not going to repair unless we have essential nutrients. Your car's not going to get down the road without oil and gas. These nutrients help to maintain proper bodily structure, and essential nutrients enable necessary cellular function. So what can you guys do, let's say, as, how can you take this information and help people with it? Well, again, this is you can have this conversation with anybody, certainly if you're in a medical situation and you're, talking to that cancer patient. I mean, that's my first question, are you taking your essential nutrients? I mean, you only got so much water, resource. How are you going to heal from cancer with a limited amount of resource? So it's we all gotta have the juice, and if we got the juice, we're gonna heal. But without the juice, we won't. Okay, so having those conversations is super important. So here's a case, example. So nutrient sufficiency should be the first client intervention for all of us. I mean, if we're responsible, ethical medical professionals, shouldn't nutrient sufficiency be the first question? And really shouldn't be the first educational piece. And we're working on this in our nonprofit with the legislature to try to get this to happen in schools, right? So every 7th and 8th grader should know what their essential nutrients are. And we should begin all client support with foundational essentials first. Foundational care builds capacity before aggressive interventions. Again, should I light you up in that chemotherapy before I've had the essential nutrient conversation? Probably not. Avoid aggressive care without first establishing capacity. So do you have the capacity to heal? Are you going to say yes to all these gates? If you're not, then we need to fix that before we go in and try to give you chemotherapy or whatever the radical thing is. Records and interpretation, so avoid over-interpreting data and making absolute claims. Again, that's for all of us. We're all learning here. As much as we think that we are supermen and have figured out, how we work, we're still all learning. Hopefully I've, introduced some things that are new today. Always maintain an accurate record of client interactions. Transparency of presenter identity and content source is vital. Clearly established scope and competency boundaries and all support. So the key takeaways really from this, foundational inputs are essential for optimal cellular function. Again, without oil and gas, you're not going to get your car down the road. Continuous communication is vital for maintaining bodily health. Simple and accessible education resources, improved client outcomes. It's not that hard to teach somebody this information, and again, it can be, tailored to any level, even children. So we teach kids classes on this. Prioritize foundational essentials for first client intervention. Okay, and references, if you guys are interested, I'm happy to send you this presentation. So if anybody wants to see kind of real quick flashing, where I got the information from. But everything that we do is science-backed. There is no woo-hoo in what we do. Everything that I've told you today, I could go and pull a white paper. I'm standing on, let's say, somebody's shoulders that has already figured out the science. So that's kind of it. Do you guys have any?